welcome back to Beauty in the Bookcase, where we take a book and we make a look. Now, last week we kicked off Theater Month with my personal favorite, Waiting for Godot. And today we're going to move on to something a bit more modern. This video is going to focus on Quiara Alegria Hudes' play, Water by the Spoonful. Warning, this video contains mentions of substance abuse, trauma, and other violent themes. Viewers' discretion is advised. So, Quiara is an American playwright of Puerto Rican descent. She was born and raised in Philadelphia, and she actually attended Yale and Brown. She is best known for writing the book for In the Heights with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, as you know. In Water by the Spoonful, we actually see one of her pre-existing characters return. So I will preface this by saying that when I read Water by the Spoonful, I didn't know it was part of a trilogy, so I haven't read the first part or the third part. So we're smack dab in the middle, but in fairness, I didn't really feel that there was really any context missing. So I think it's definitely written to be fine as a standalone play. So in Water by the Spoonfuls, we see the return of the character Elliot from a play of the same name. And the characters in this play are all coming together both in person and through technology. The play actually earned Quiara a Pulitzer Prize and was followed by the play The Happiest Song Plays, which is the final part of the Elliot trilogy. Her work often focuses around family, broken relationships, and life as a Latino in the US. So, like most things that I read, Water by the Spoonful talks about a lot of dark, sort of serious, real-life topics. Will I ever talk about anything happy on this channel? Probably not. But hey, if you have a recommendation, let me know down in the comments below. So as I mentioned before, this play kind of does a really good job of blending reality and the virtual world. So we have characters sort of interacting in the now, which are Elliot and his cousin Jazz, short for Jasmine, I assume. And then we have Odessa and a couple other characters interacting strictly online, but then those relationships start to sort of, I guess, materialize or, become in-person relationships in a way. So the events online happen on like an addiction recovery forum. So it is between Haiku Mom, who is Odessa, Elliot's mother, well, his birth mother, a girl called Orangutan, well, her username is Orangutan, Shoots and Ladders, and later on Fountainhead. So Haiku Mom, Orangutan, and Shoots and Ladder, they kind of already had an established dynamic. They had an established relationship on the forum when we first meet Fountainhead. So Fountainhead is actually coming to the forum seeking support because he's just starting to sort of get through his addiction. He's just starting out his recovery process and he just wanted a support system. So while Shoots and Ladders and Orangutan are kind of skeptical about the newcomer, Haiku Mom is actually very welcoming and supportive, especially because Fountainhead lives in the same area that Haiku Mom does, so she could actually offer him support, in person. And, it was kind of a bit more of a tangible relationship than the online relationship that they had. But that's not really to put down or downplay sort of the online group that they had, because they really were their own little family. Now you might be asking yourself, how the heck does this connect to the real world? Well, as I mentioned, Haiku Mom, or Odessa, was Elliot's birth mom. Now, unfortunately, because of her addiction, she wasn't able to raise him. So he was actually raised by his aunt, Odessa's sister, Ginny, who is his cousin Jazz's biological mother. Now, naturally, Elliot has always resented his mother, his biological mother, for her choices, but he was very, very, very close to Ginny. So when she passes away and Odessa's kind of very, I guess, uninvolved or detached from the from the funeral arrangements that he and Jazz have taken upon themselves, he just becomes even more estranged from her, and he's kind of just angrier at her. Now, although Orangutan and Chutes and Ladders did meet on the addiction forum, their lives are, well, their relationship to each other is a bit less complicated than Odessa's relationship to her son, Elliot. So both being recovering addicts, when Orangutan decides that she wants to go to Japan to find her birth parents, she actually ends up inviting Chutes and Ladders to come with her. And although originally he says no because he's very anxious and he kind of, recovery has been the center of his life for so long that he doesn't feel that he can give much to sort of like that in-person relationship, but he's actually able to overcome that anxiety and meet up with her. Now, sadly, Odessa does end up relapsing, and Fountainhead then becomes her main caretaker, kind of repaying that favor that, she so graciously has been helping him through his recovery journey. And, Elliot never really, in this play, manages to sort of regain a relationship with his mother, but he does end up going back to Puerto Rico with his cousin Jazz to spread Aunt Ginny's ashes, or Mama Ginny as he called her. And it's in that time that they're in Puerto Rico that they both decide that they wanted something more out of their lives than what was happening. So Jazz decides to actually move away from the family she'd formed. She was going through a divorce, and she buys her mother's home in Philly and she moves down there. And then Elliot decides to move to LA because he wants to become an actor. Now, while this play might seem kind of hopeless and sad, it's actually kind of hopeful. And while I do confess that I did cry when I first read it, it does paint a realistic picture of the journey of addiction and recovery, both literal and metaphorical. And it puts each character in a completely new path from where they had originally started. Now, mainly, this is a play about family. And it's both about the family that we choose and the family that we're born into. Of course, Elliot struggles establishing a positive, healthy relationship with his birth mother. He does have two other family influences in his life. He has Ginny, who raised him, and then his cousin, who they both kind of stepped into that maternal figure and that caring, guiding figure that it's very clear that Elliot needed, sort of missing his bio mom his whole life. He always kind of seems to turn to the women in his life for guidance. But this isn't really like just a one-way relationship. It's not just like only Elliot is benefiting from these relationships. Of course, while we don't get to see him interact with Ginny, the fact that she took him in and that she raised him his whole life kind of speaks volumes to the type of relationship that they must have had and the amount of love that she must have felt, not only for Elliot, but also for her sister to take in her child. And again, that also doesn't go, I guess, unrepaid when it comes to Jazz, since she's going through a divorce and all these life changes that are, of course, very difficult. And she's able to sort of rely on Elliot because he's also not only recovering from his issues with his mother and the loss of his adoptive mother, but also PTSD from war. So they're able to lean on each other and just have a wholesome, healthy relationship in their own kind of broken way, if that makes sense. Now, in our virtual world, our addicts are gaining a new sense of family. A lot of them, unfortunately, because of their addictions, were alienated from or by their families, and they have a lot of regret, including Odessa, who wishes she had a better relationship with her son. But of course, nothing can be done to change the past, so instead they formed their own family. And while it is a community of support and love, they're also always making sure to be honest, like painfully honest. They will call each other out on things, as you know, as family should do. But it's always coming from a loving and supportive place. They never want to make the people in the group feel ashamed or guilty or uncomfortable or unsafe, but they do want them to stay on this healthier path that they have chosen. So in a way, you know, by her calling herself Haiku Mom, you know, Odessa definitely takes on sort of that loving maternal caretaker role within the group. And, you know, the other members kind of become her children by proxy. So it's almost like she gets a chance to redo it. And to an extent, it's a bit, I don't want to say easier, but there is that level of understanding that Elliot doesn't have. Of, you know, she was an addict and everyone else in the group has been there. So there isn't kind of that resentment of, oh, you left me or you chose, you know, your addiction over me. Instead, it's a whole group of people knowing like, hey, we've also kind of alienated our loved ones and we failed as friends, as parents, as children. But there's a bit more of an understanding that somebody who hasn't been on that path, I guess, wouldn't really understand, I guess. So it really seems that what the author is trying to sort of convey through this is that everybody needs the help of somebody else in this book. Nobody is ever alone. Well, they are in the beginning. It's sort of like them journeying from that loneliness into finding each other and being able to go through that journey of recovery together. PTSD, abandonment issues, death, substance abuse, you name it. Nobody in this play actually kind of gets to catch a break or live like a healthy, normal life, you know? They're all going through something. And I think, you know, that was obviously very intentional. It was the author's way of sort of saying, you know, we all have our journeys and our struggles and our traumas, but it's important to sort of be communicative about that and sort of remind each other that we're all going through something. And, you know, most people, if not, you know, everyone, you know, everyone has their own challenges. And that seems to sort of be the core message here, is that we need to support each other, even if it's not always the same type of difficulty. And I think sort of having addiction as such a key role was also the author's way to explain addiction. You know, as some, I thankfully never had an addiction, but I do know people who have had them. And, you know, when you go through these character stories, you can very much see that reflected in the people around you who have gone through so much and they've just turned to their addictions as a way to cope. And, you know, they sort of need a guiding hand to understand what they're going through and be supportive, but also not enable them, sort of help them get through that darkness and find a new way to deal with their past trauma. However, the play makes sure to not paint the world as this dark pit devoid of any hope. It instead uses all these characters as a way to create a support system and as a way to show that there is a chance for redemption and recovery and change, and that life doesn't have to be this devastating period of just like eternal darkness, I guess. You know, it sort of uses everyone's trauma to weave them together, to weave their stories together and sort of give them an understanding of each other's lives, even though, you know, their circumstances and all that might be quite different. You know, the author doesn't try to paint a pretty picture about recovery at all, or about trauma at all, but you know, we have these characters who do relapse, who have hate in their hearts, who have fear or anxiety and all these, you know, all this baggage, but she makes sure that there isn't just darkness without light. She makes sure that everyone has somebody to journey through their struggle with. And, you know, it's all of these characters finally grappling with the issues that they had been running away from for a long time. And it's this confrontation with reality that sort of brings recovery into play in the story. Quiara seems to say that recovery is possible, but only if you can walk away from your pain, and it's even easier if you have somebody to walk away from it with. By the end of the play, as I mentioned earlier, nobody is left alone. Jazz and Elliot have each other. And Odessa, although she doesn't get her child back, she has Fountainhead now caring for her after her overdose. And, you know, Shoots and Ladders and Orangutan, you know, they're going on this new adventure in Japan, and it's everyone gets a new start at the end. I think very much like in Waiting for Godot, where it's kind of like it ends, but the end is just kind of like a new suggested beginning. The play very much has that, and of course, knowing now that there is a third part, I'll definitely have to go back and read the first one, Elliot, and then read the third part so we can sort of weave the story together and see how that works out. But even without there having to be, you know, another part, I think the ending is still quite effective in sort of showing like recovery is possible, and it's fine if you relapse, it's fine if you're angry or frustrated or you don't understand why things worked out the way they did, but, you know, find that support system and ground yourself and move on, because it is possible to just try again. And what I love is that, you know, it's not just the young people starting over. We have Odessa as well, who, you know, if her sister was, you know, old enough, what, you know, she was older when she passed away, we can assume that, you know, Odessa is, you know, maybe in her 50s. I don't know if they ever say, so they might, so excuse me if this is wrong. But, you know, let's say she's, you know, in her late 40s or her 50s or even her 60s, you know, even she gets a fresh start. And that's kind of very encouraging, I think. Kind of, you know, a reminder that it's never too late to sort of try and start again. So what's it all about? Well, at its core, Water by the Spoonful is a story about community and recovery. Quiara acknowledges that the world we live in is dark and we all carry our trauma, but we don't have to do it alone. She invites us to step away from the pain and into the arms of a loved one, whether that's a relative, a friend, or a complete stranger who's about to change your life. We are all worthy of recovery. We all deserve a second chance. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you recreate this look, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Maria Eugenia. You can find that in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this, especially if you love theater, since we still got 2 more weeks of theater month. And make sure to hit that notification bell so you know exactly when I upload every Wednesday and Friday, and I will see you guys next time.